to start this morning by speaking about a sports scandal. And no, I'm not talking about the fact that the Spartans were up 7 points 3 minutes before the end of the game last night and managed to lose to Maryland by 7 points. They are breaking my heart, and I don't even know them. No, I'm talking about the sports scandal surrounding the Houston Astros, winners of the 2017 World Series, who have been convicted this year of sign stealing. Sign stealing. That is an old trick, but they've put a new cutting-edge technology to work in their sign stealing. It's turned out that they were stealing signs all the way through when they won the World Series. And oh boy, when they found out that the Houston Astros had been cheating, they really got a fine, didn't they? $5 million. That's a sneeze for a Major League ball team. $5 million, a mere pittance. They were not stripped of their titles as World Series winners, even though it happened while they were cheating. Okay. And the real disappointment, maybe to me the real scandal, is the Astros owner, Jim Crane, who absolutely must have known what was going on. Either he condoned it or he let it happen. He came out and gave what people are calling was a simple, half-hearted apology, sort of a sorry, not sorry, sort of a, oh, get over it, we would have won anyway kind of word. It hasn't made people feel very good about the Houston Astros. But one hope on the horizon for the Astros is the hiring of Dusty Baker, the new manager, who is an upright man, who is known for integrity, for loving the sport, for playing a clean game, and for helping teams rebuild and get back on their feet when they've been through a tough time. As I heard one reporter say, if anyone can restore this team, Baker can. It's important that Baker is at the head as the manager because he is someone that people trust, and the thought is that his good conduct, his sense of integrity, will filter through the whole organization. That's the truth. A leader of integrity, a man of good conscience, can influence the whole organization. I've been thinking about that scandal. I've also been thinking about that scandal because I was in Cleveland earlier this week on Friday, and I was sitting in a room and I came across a magazine that is published by the Healthcare Financial Management Association. Isn't that fun? Healthcare Management Financial Association. They published this trade magazine, and their cover story for December was entitled Beyond Compliance, the Ethical CFO. Beyond Compliance. If you read the article, and I don't know how many of you are involved in healthcare finance, but if you read the article, you would see that it was talking about that it's not enough these days in healthcare to simply not break the law. You need to do more than that. You need to go beyond compliance. You need to do what is right, as one of the interviewees said. And then they outlined the 4 keys to creating an ethical culture in a healthcare organization. Here are the 4 keys. Number 1, you set an example in the C-suite. I had to look up what that meant, the C-suite. That means the CEO, the CFO, the COO. These are the people who are in charge of the organization. The ones at the top have to set the example to creating an ethical culture because ethics in baseball and in healthcare starts at the top. The second thing, the other key is you need to create a speak-up culture, meaning that when people see something wrong, when they see something that needs to be corrected, they need to be able to report it to their supervisors or a higher authority without fear of retribution. See something, say something in a CFO organization. Second key. The third key to creating an ethical culture is to make the compliance department your ally, not your enemy. Which means that the people who are helping you understand and enforce the rules, to follow the rules, are not the enemy. They are your ally. These are the people who can correct you, who are on your side. Make the compliance department an ally, not an enemy. And the fourth one was, to extend transparency to patients. The patients that you're serving in your healthcare organization have to know that if they have questions or if there are problems, it's a transparent system. People should be able to trust the healthcare system, not to cheat them or break the law. Wow. Does any of this seem like a revelation? I read it and I was like, well, duh, isn't this what you're supposed to do? It kind of was shocking to me that the cover story of a magazine was the fact that the top of the organization should follow the law, everyone else should follow the law, and you shouldn't punish people who point out if you're breaking the law. I'll leave that there. Healthcare, baseball, this should not come to us as news. It seems a little obvious. So now I want to talk about Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is written in the voice of Moses. And not just the voice of Moses. This is the voice of the one who formed the people. Their ancestors are Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Those are the great patriarchs. But the one who led them through the wilderness, who got them through the worst times, is Moses. Deuteronomy is written from the perspective of Moses, the one who does not get to cross over the River Jordan and enter the Promised Land. If you saw the Cecil B. DeMille movie, you know this. He didn't get to cross over. And so, in essence, what Deuteronomy becomes is his last words, his last will and testament to the people that he no longer gets to lead. Deuteronomy, it literally means the second word. The second word. This is a retelling, a restatement, a reminding of the 10 Commandments and all the ordinances, all the things that they need in order to flourish and thrive in this new place. Chapter 30, the chapter that we're reading from, is the last of 3 great sermons that scholars have identified. These are the last words of a beloved leader to the people he doesn't get to lead. See, I have set before you today life and prosperity and death and adversity. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I am commanding you today by loving the Lord your God, walking in God's ways, observing God's commandments, decrees, and ordinances, you shall live and be numerous. And the Lord will bless you in the land that you are entering to possess. I set before you the ways of life and prosperity and death and adversity. Good and bad is in front of you. Choose the good. Be faithful, be loving, follow the commandments. It seems simple. Except the book of Deuteronomy was not written by Moses. It's written in the voice of Moses, but it historically did not happen. No one was taking dictation on the banks of the River Jordan. No. The book of Deuteronomy is created over a period of 200 years, 200 tumultuous years in the life of Israel, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. It actually follows a trajectory in the history of Israel where they had come into the land. They had taken possession against all odds. They were a great and numerous nation, ta-da! And then it all fell apart. They did bow down to other gods. They lost their distinctiveness. They stopped following the commandments and rules of Moses, and eventually historical events overtook them. The Babylonians come raging down and destroy Jerusalem, destroy the temple. Everything that they have built up is gone. They're taken into captivity. They raised a generation that doesn't know anything about Jerusalem or the Promised Land. And then suddenly, the Babylonian king is like, okay, you can go back. This is the time that this passage from Deuteronomy is meant to address. People that have risen and fallen and are in crisis, they're hopeless and despairing, and they're wondering, well, now what? And so some brilliant person pulls back 200 more years in their past, reminds them of what Moses meant for them never to forget. Everything in this passage, verse 17 on, everything in this passage, but if your heart turns away and you do not hear. But if you are led astray to bow down to other gods and serve them, I declare to you this day you shall perish. All of that has happened. This is not a prediction of the future. It is a description of the present. It has happened. They had entered the land. They had become a great and mighty nation, and they did turn away. Their kings forgot the worship of Yahweh, the one true God. They had forgotten their purpose. They no longer held the faith that gave their lives unity and energy and purpose, and they had fallen apart. And so Deuteronomy comes and it resurrects the voice of Moses, who speaks to them once again and tells them not just to return to this land, but to return to the one who brought them to this land to begin with. They have forgotten not only who they are, but whose they are. And chapter 30 of Deuteronomy reminds them once again. Do not forget. Do not forget. Moses, these books of Moses, and all the prophets, they speak to us. But they were written not to speak to the common people necessarily. They were meant to speak to the nation, and frankly, they were meant to speak to the head of the nation, the king. That's where the prophets are often speaking their words of truth. Speaking to the top, because ethical, moral, faithful behavior begins at the top. And so Deuteronomy speaks to this body. I have set before you the ways of life and prosperity, death and adversity. Choose the right way. Isn't that enough for today? I don't know about you. I don't know all of you as well as I would like and hope to know you in days to come. But these days I'm feeling a little uneasy, a little helpless, a little unsure. I heard someone describe this moment in our history as sort of a moral vertigo. It's hard to know which way is up and which way is down and what's right and what's wrong. When the Houston Astros are playing America's sport and they cheat and win, what's right and what's wrong? What are the ways of life and death? But there's good news here, and here's the good news. For people who are in despair, whether it's the Israelites returning to the land or those of us who find ourselves wondering what the future holds, for people who are in despair, when it feels like events have overtaken us and that we can't do anything, this is God's good news. The voice of Moses speaking to this current situation, not just a historical situation, and says, we get a do-over. We get a do-over. Enter the land again. Remind yourself to be faithful and follow the statutes that are put before you. It's not that confusing. Just as Israel gets a do-over in this return to the land, so do we in the person of Jesus Christ, who is God's fullest revelation, who has shown us the ways of life. And not only does Jesus show us the ways of life, I have set before you life and prosperity, death and adversity. No. Jesus walks ahead. And I find it a lot easier to follow someone who's ahead of me. That's good news. We get a do-over, and in person we have a leader who will not disappoint. But the second good piece of news is that our small acts matter. The good you do, and I say this time and time again, the good you do out in the world, in the church, in the community, in the office, the good you do matters because you are playing a role in a play that has already been written. God has already figured out how this one ends, and there are 2 scripts before you. Read the lines that encourage, that uplift, that embrace, that help. The ways of life and death are before us. Every small thing we do that brings life and love and light to this world is a step in the right direction, and we are following the head who is not only the ethical purity, moral to the core, but the love of God in totality. My friends, do not despair. Good is all around. Amen.